Hi, welcome to Bite-Sized Server Components. This is episode 1, where we're talking about what server components are. In episode 2, we'll take a deeper look at why server components are useful in your applications. We'll wrap up this trilogy with episode 3, where we'll take a look at how server components were created. But first, who am I and why should you care? I'm Gerald Monaco. I previously led the work to integrate React 18 and server components into Next.js. Prior to that, I designed a prototype of a precursor to server components while at Facebook called Relay Entry Points. We'll talk more about that in episode 3. Before we can understand server components, we have to understand regular components, like this one here. It returns some HTML elements, like a div, a link, and so on, and some nested React components too. And if we dig into those, we find even more HTML elements. All components eventually render to HTML. But of course, we know this isn't actually HTML, it's JSX. It's a description of the DOM tree that we want. React will take that description and create or update the DOM to match it. So we can say that a function that takes some props and returns a description of a DOM tree is a React component. But more specifically, it's a React client component. And so a React server component is just a function that takes some props and returns a description of a client component tree. That's it. That's all. But wait a second. Doesn't a client component kind of do that too? Well, the distinction may appear subtle. It does exist. Client components are all about the client and the DOM. They're about describing the DOM and making the DOM interactive by using client hooks like useEffect and useCallback. Server components are about the server. They're about your backend and fetching data from your database and deciding which client components to render. Without server components, your client component tree is split in half. On one side, you have dynamic data like props, and on the other, a static tree shape. These come back together on the browser. But with server components, the entire description of the client component tree is moved to the server. The result is more power and flexibility for your React application, which we'll talk more about in episode 2. Thank you for watching. See you next time.